The Witcher is one of the most iconic RPG franchises in gaming history, and The Witcher 3 in particular is widely seen as one of the best games ever made. It is my favorite game ever. The love for The Witcher 3 is a major reason why there's so much hype surrounding The Witcher 4 right now, but earlier this year, there was a leak that revealed that Fool's Theory is working on brand new content for the game, despite it being 10 years old. Today, we're going to be going over everything that we know so far about the upcoming Witcher 3 DLC, including what kind of DLC this could be, how big is it, when is the DLC going to release, and how will this DLC tie into The Witcher 4. So The Witcher 3 first launched on PC, Xbox One, and PS4 back in 2015 and received critical acclaim for its amazing storytelling, incredible world building, and addictive gameplay. CDPR released two amazing expansions for the game, Hearts of Stone and Blood and Wine, and since then they've done an amazing job at supporting the game's technical state and performance, which also made the game a playground for modders on the PC. A couple of years ago, CDPR released a massive re-release for The Witcher 3 that completely revamped the graphics and lighting to make it look more in line with modern AAA RPGs, and if you haven't played the game since they released that big overhaul, you absolutely should, because it's a night and day difference. And the original version of the game already looked amazing and played amazing, so definitely boot this up, especially if you haven't played it in a while. It'll open up your eyes and give you a new appreciation for its world. But now that The Witcher 3 has been brought up to modern standards and CDPR has updated the game to be more properly supported on modern tech, that's opened up the door for them to start introducing new content, which is apparently what they're planning in the very near future. For those of you that don't know, The Witcher 3 is actually currently planning on a big update that will bring mod support on consoles, the PS5 and the Xbox Series consoles. So at the moment, we know that at least one update is in the works by Fool's Theory or CDPR or even Virtuous. Now, when it comes to the Witcher 3 DLC, this has just been a report that we've heard. CDPR has not officially confirmed or commented on anything, but these stories are coming from very reputable sources with great track records. So just keep that in mind. According to the report, CDPR has actually teamed up with the studio Fool's Theory that is actively helping on the development for The Witcher 4, and they're also going to be working on the Witcher 1 remake. But apparently Fool's Theory is going to be creating some new Witcher 3 DLC, which I'm guessing will be a way to kind of bridge the gap between The Witcher 3 and The Witcher 4. So yeah, with Fool's Theory allegedly helping on the development of The Witcher 4, and they're the ones that are going to be remaking The Witcher 1, which won't start its development fully until after The Witcher 4 releases. That gives the rest of the studio some time to actually develop on The Witcher 3. Now, Fool's Theory is also a development studio that is comprised of a lot of ex-CDPR developers, so they're very in tune with the current state of affairs over at CDPR, especially in regards to what their plans are for the Witcher universe. Now, I believe it was initially reported that the DLC was set to release sometime in 2025, but more recent reports are suggesting that it's been pushed back to next year in 2026. Which is perfectly fine with me, because I'll wait as long as it takes in order to get new content for The Witcher 3. Now, the exact details of this Witcher 3 DLC are a little murky because the bar is extremely high for The Witcher 3 expansions, which, if you guys know how CDPR does their expansions versus their DLC, the rumor has specifically said it's going to be DLC, not an expansion, which honestly it makes sense. Like, usually whenever CDPR uses the word expansion, they mean it's going to be almost an entire game, but the DLC word is usually just like a smaller update, like New Game Plus or even console mods drop into the game. But the fact that they're bringing on Fool's Theory to do the actual development seems to suggest that this upcoming DLC could be a lot bigger than I previously thought it was going to be. Obviously, CDPR knows how high the bar is set whenever it comes to any new content added to their game. Like, the reality is not many people know the difference between a DLC and an expansion for The Witcher. So whenever they think DLC, they immediately think of like Blood and Wine and Hearts of Stone, but us gamers who play their games know that there's a big difference. So if they announce new DLC for The Witcher 3, they know people are going to be expecting a lot from them. And if they're bringing on Fool's Theory to do the development, I'd assume they think that they're up to the task. I mean, they're trusting Fool's Theory with a full remake of The Witcher 1. So surely they would trust this studio to make a Witcher 3 DLC that's on the same level as the previous ones, right? Now, there have been some suggestions that Fool's Theory's DLC is basically going to be just a bunch of new gameplay additions and cosmetics. But according to the reports, it's going to be a fully fledged story DLC, which I think it's going to be a mix between the both. I think there will be a story or like quest that we get, but I also think they will have a bunch of new gameplay additions and cosmetics. CDPR is known to push out smaller updates to Cyberpunk 2077 that just add things like, weapon tweaks, new cosmetics, smaller NPC updates. So it wouldn't be out of character to do something for The Witcher 3, but at the same time, it'd probably be better to use a external studio like Virtuos that they use for Cyberpunk to develop the smaller scale DLC and then use, Fool's Theory to do the story portion of the DLC, or they could just use both of them. Since Fool's Theory has the experience working on the Witcher games, they could be the ones handling the story and the questing portion, and then have Virtuos there to do all of these smaller updates like, various tweaks, bug fixes, and further polish. But CDPR specifically using Fool's Theory tells me that they have bigger plans than just a simple content patch. But just how big is this DLC going to be? Since we know that it's a DLC and not like the 2 expansions that we've had for this game, what kind of scope and just overall scale could this DLC be? If they do add new story content, will it be something like a 2-hour story quest? Could it be something that's even longer? That is, if they're even doing the story portion of the game, which I do assume that they are. But if you put things into perspective of the 2 expansions that we've gotten for The Witcher 3, Hearts of Stone was around a 10 to 15 hours expansion, while Blood and Wine was more like 15 to 40 hours, depending on how you do all of the side content and stuff. So with this just being a DLC that we're getting, apparently, I would say that it's going to be anywhere between like 2 and maybe 5 hours of story content, if that is indeed what we're getting, which honestly, I don't even care what we get. Like, if they give us 2 hours of story content, then great. If it's 5 hours, awesome. So it's almost impossible to determine how big this DLC is going to be. Is it actually a DLC? Is it like a hidden expansion that they're working on? If that's the case, then really all bets are off. But I would say that a DLC that has around 5 hours of content would be perfectly sufficient in my opinion. Now, as for the content, there are a couple of directions that this DLC could go. On one hand, it's possible that the new DLC is going to take place somewhere in the middle of the game story, similar to the Hearts of Stone expansion. However, it's also possible that this new content ends up being a mini sequel to the base content, similar to the Blood and Wine expansion, which took place about 3 years after the conclusion of the base game story. Personally, I think the most likely scenario is the new content takes place somewhere in the middle of the base game story, partially because that'll be a lot easier for it to fit into the canon of the game, but also partially because CDPR is currently working on The Witcher 4, and I seriously doubt that they want to give a different studio the ability to make their own mini sequel to the base content and potentially mess up the flow they were going for. I mean, think about it. CDPR was very meticulous about the endings of The Witcher 3, and they were very careful about how Blood and Wine content fit into it, and they're certainly going to be taking all of that into account when they officially show us the transition into Witcher 4. Do you really think they would give another studio the opportunity to, access the space between The Witcher 3 and 4 and potentially allow them to almost mess up the flow of events? Or do you think it's more likely that they're giving Fool's Theory the middle of The Witcher 3's timeline, so that way it's easier for all of the major emotional beats of the existing story to remain untouched? And that's not to say that I don't trust Fool's Theory, because obviously they wouldn't have brought them on if they didn't trust them, but at the same time, they probably want to minimize any potential confusion that can be brought into the canon with a third DLC that is set to add to the story, especially if they're not the ones making it, which that right there is a big signal to me that the third DLC is going to take place somewhere within the main game story, which that of course begs the question, what could this story DLC be about? Will this give us more backstory about Ciri's internal struggle? Perhaps they give us more of a reason of why she became a Witcher rather than going down the Empress route. Imagine this DLC is literally about Ciri going through the Trial of the Grasses. Like, that would be insane. I doubt that would happen with this game, but it's very possible. That way, whenever The Witcher 4 releases, they don't have to tell all of that story. They can just kind of jump into things without issues. But I think that's a pretty big ask. Like, imagine that they do that and then people play the DLC and experience it and they're just like, well, I don't need to buy The Witcher 4 now because what's the point? The timing of all of this is very interesting, but completely makes sense when you look at what CDPR has been working on, as well as what their release schedule looks like. The team alongside Virtuos has been working hard at expanding Cyberpunk 2077, but it's also clear that most of the AAA team working on Cyberpunk 2077 before has moved on to The Witcher 3, and then the rest of the developers are working on Cyberpunk 2 over in the Boston studio. And then there's The Witcher 1 remake, which won't come until after The Witcher 4 due to the fact that the team is co-developing as well as using the tech that CDPR made for The Witcher 4, which means that full development on The Witcher 1 won't start until after CDPR is finished developing all of The Witcher 4 tech. So there's going to be at least a 2-year gap between Witcher 4 and The Witcher 1 most likely. Needless to say, that's a lot of waiting that Witcher fans are in for the next few years. So from a corporate standpoint, it totally makes sense that they want Witcher content out before as a way to hold fans over until the new content comes out in a few years. Since The Witcher 3 has been properly updated for modern hardware and it still has a massive community, it makes total sense that CDPR would want to use it as a vessel to get some new content out in the wild as a way to keep people engaged before The Witcher 4 hits stores, hopefully in a few years. So even though it's a pretty rare sight for a single player game to get DLC a decade after release, it makes total sense for it to happen for this game in particular. Let's just hope they do the game justice. But that's going to wrap it up with this video. Let me know what your thoughts are down in the comment section. Are you excited for Witcher 3 DLC? What kind of DLC do you want? Do you want it to be more story related, or would you rather have it more combat related? Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe with your noties on, and until next time, this has been Wes, and I will talk to you guys in the next video.